I call to order the regular meeting of the King George County Service Authority Board of Directors. We'll start with an invocation by Ms. Kupka and the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Miller.
Dear Lord, thank you for bringing us together here this evening to conduct the business of the Service Authority. Thank you for sending your only Son to save us from our sin. And let us please, not just during this season, but at all times, remember the reason for the season. In your name we pray. Amen.
Mr. Miller, are there any amendments to the agenda?
No, ma'am.
I'll now open public comment. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. If comments relate to a specific public hearing item, we ask that you offer those comments at the time of the public hearing. Each speaker shall provide their name and current physical address at the time of public comment. Not seeing anyone in the audience for public comment. Mr. Dines, is there anyone online?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. I now close the floor for the public comment. Reports of members of the board.
No report at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, two things. First, I do have a question for the interim general manager with regard to the Monmouth Water Tower. I know it was mentioned in the last meeting that it was drained and being serviced. So is that routine service? That's routine maintenance that from time to time over the years needs to be performed. Is that correct?
Yes, and Ms. Norris Barker could probably tell you the last time that they did that one, but I believe they're on a rotation, is that correct? And it's with our contract with Southern Corrosion. And so when's the next, do you know by chance when the next one?
Or could we just get an email tomorrow? I don't need to know right this minute. I just was contacted by a customer inquiring as to why that was being done. Thank you very much. And then the other thing is because it bears some interest on water. Last week on November 30th, I attended the Chesapeake Bay Restoration Fund Advisory Committee meeting at the General Assembly. I will mention this during my Board of Supervisors report as well, but I did leave out some photocopies on the table outside. If anyone is interested in learning more about the fund, it's funded by the sale of the CRAB license plates, the Chesapeake Bay license plates. So if you're interested in perhaps obtaining one of those, I have those plates. $15 of every registration goes towards the fund, and then we review all of the grant applications from environmental groups, schools, and make recommendation to the General Assembly to provide meaningful watershed experiences and environmental projects for funding by the General Assembly. And this year we were able to award $254,000 in funding. That's all I have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Kupka. And I do not have a report. I'll move on to the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to accept it as the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Moving on to public presentations. Ms. Lackey, County Attorney Report.
Good evening. In your agenda packet is the proposed Aqua Virginia rate increase proposal. This does not apply to service authority customers. It's provided for informational purposes only, just on the rates that are being paid by some other ratepayers within the county. I did report on this at the last meeting, so I'll be brief. But the State Corporation Commission is the entity that it authorizes the rate increase. And it has authorized those rates to be effective on or after February 5th. However, if the final rate increase is not approved, then they have to refund customers that pay at the higher rate. So the public comment period is open currently until April 30th. That is through the SCC's website. And once again, in the agenda packet, you can find the link if you wish to comment on that. There's also a telephonic public hearing opportunity when the hearing is actually conducted on April 23rd. And once again, that information is in the agenda packet. The proposed rate increase for water is a 33.88 revenue increase, and for sewer, 21.08%. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Lackey. Are there any questions?
I do want to point out at your desks, there is a letter from Caroline County that was directed to me as the county administrator, and basically they are asking if the county wants to go in with them in a protest to Aqua, because I believe that in Caroline County they're also encountering this with some ratepayers that are county residents incurring a pretty significant increase. So if that is the desire of the service authority, I would ask for that direction so I could work with Ms. Lackey and we could prepare something that would get to the state as well as interact with the Caroline County folks. As you know, the Caroline County has their own public utilities department, and that's why it's coming from the Board of Supervisors.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Mull, I'm going to piggyback on that. I've talked to two of the supervisors from Caroline, and they're very concerned, especially the one that has services, who is the constituents are two of the major subdivisions in Caroline that actually are having this increase. And they're very concerned about the affordability of our water rates. A lot of people always ding King George as being one of the highest, but in those rankings, they never put the private entities in there, Aqua being one of them. And it shows this 33% possibility of a rate increase that's, I have to say, I don't think King George ever did that to their ratepayers, but that is a big jump, especially in times like that now where people are struggling to be able to provide for their families. It's a really large increase. And I forget exactly, I think it's a lot for infrastructure that they have put out and would like to put out in the future. But I think we should, since we do have citizens that are on, we should look into saying that, you know, we have concerns also on that.
Ms. Kopka?
Madam Chair, thank you. I don't disagree with that, Ms. Bender. My only hesitation is there's also, this isn't just like a letter of opposition that I am definitely in favor of, if there's consensus of this board, to do a letter in opposition and file it with the SCC in the public comment period. My concern, though, is that they're talking, it states in the letter, cases such as this can include significant expense for experts to review and analyze Aqua's purported basis for yet another rate increase. So then it later goes on to say whether or not King George would be interested in working together to share expenses and present a joint defense. My concern then is that we're passing the expense of this opposing what's happening to Aqua onto our own ratepayers. And I'm not sure that's, I feel like I would like to know more about what these expenses would look like before we commit to that, is my only hesitation.
Madam Chair.
So I would agree with that. I would want to know what the expenses entail too. And another question is, do we know how this compares to actually our rates in King George?
You implemented a 10% increase this year for the budget. I don't know if the last time they did a rate increase, we would have to, find out. I don't know if that happened last year that they also put a rate increase, but I don't believe that the county, the service authority has ever been at 33%. Even over 5 years, I don't believe that matches up.
So I'm not necessarily, because it could just be poor management over several years of, no, I'm not budgeting correctly. And so I'm trying just to figure out from the perspective of what the rates are in general, you know what I mean? Like, how is it comparing to what we're paying? That would be a good thing to look into, to see if it's even something that we want to entertain.
We can get further information.
Madam Chair, I wasn't looking for us to share in legal costs, just that, we can communicate with them and see what they're looking at, that it would be something of interest. And it might not even be from the Service Authority Board, from the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this? Okay, let's move on to the RK&K Engineering. We have a presentation about Perkins Corner decommissioning.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay? Good evening, board members. I'm Jeff Kapanos with RK&K. I also have Jenny Robinette with RK&K. We've been working with Bryce and the staff on the design of the Perkins wastewater plant decommissioning project. Just want to give you an update where we are and what our path going forward looks like. You can go to the next slide, please. Just to, in case you're not familiar with the entirety of the project, this project entails, first and foremost, the Perkins Corner wastewater plant is down to the right on Route 3. Right now, a force main runs in yellow from approximately where the Presidential Village pump station is to the Perkins Corner wastewater plant and flows down there. The purpose of this project is we're going to add not only force main in green to the west from that point, Presidential Village, about 20,000 linear feet of force main down to the Hopyard wastewater plant. As part of this project, we're going to also add about 11,000 or 13,000 feet of water main to interconnect the Arnold's Corner water system with the Hopyard water system. In addition to the pipelines we have shown there, we're doing work at 6 of your pump stations, all shown up there, to work on the hydraulics and some aging issues to make sure those are working properly to reverse the flow. We're basically now going to be pumping from Perkins Corner out to the Hopyard facility. We also have a demolition plan for the Perkins Corner wastewater plant included in this design, and those are the key aspects of the project. On the next slide, if you would advance, this is where we are right now. Those force mains, water mains, and pump stations are at 60% design complete, design drawings. We have turned those into the county. We actually met today to go over their review comments on the pipeline portion. So we will progress that towards final design. The Hopyard wastewater plant improvements and the Perkins Corner demolition plan will be submitted by the end of the year for the 60% review. We've completed all the field surveying and property boundary survey along the route, so we can start looking at easements and all the impacts to the properties there. We've done the initial geotechnical work for our design. We've also completed the field wetlands delineations along the route so we can get a handle on environmental permitting. So that is where we are today on the project. The next slide, please. These are our next steps. As soon as we've received some great comments today, when we make our revisions, we would like to begin the easement process with the county. There's approximately 25 easements to be gathered, and that sometimes can take a little while. So we want to work on that concurrently with our 90 and 100% design documents. We also want to begin the environmental permitting process in the next couple of months to make sure we're ahead of the curve on that. We'll be working, we've already done preliminary submittals. We'll work towards final submittals with the state agencies, Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, VDH for the water line, and VDOT, since we're running along the right-of-ways in many instances. We'll also work on obtaining local permitting, the local ENS, land disturbance, other permits that are required in the county. And then we will be working towards bidding and awarding probably at least 2 contracts. We've been talking with staff in the county on the best way to bid this to give the best bang for the buck and a successful project. So we'll work that out. We'll probably have 2 contracts going on, more to follow on that. So that's where we are in the progress part. On the cost updates that we turned in with our 60%, this is how it is looking with contingencies. These are construction cost estimates. About $6 million to put in the force mains, about $5 million for the water mains to interconnect, a little over $1 million for the pump station improvements that I showed you. The Hop Yard wastewater plant, about $1.5 million to improve that facility. Another $2 million to tie everything together, and then just under $1 million to demolish the Perkins Corner wastewater plant, turn that into some usable property for whatever. A total budget right now of just under $17 million for that infrastructure. And this is our project schedule. You can see we're right at the line between 2023, 2024. So as I mentioned, we've done all the preliminary engineering surveying and 60% design by the end of this year. The first half of 2024, we'll be working on the final design and permitting while we're doing the easement acquisition process, working with the county and staff and everyone, so that we can begin hopefully bidding these projects in late summer, early fall, receiving bids, and first bucket in the ground, so to speak, in November, about a year from now, on those projects, with a construction period of probably about a year and a half plus on to account for everything, finishing by summer of 2026. So that is the brief update. I'll be happy to answer any questions y'all may have.
Any questions?
Thank you. First off, the construction timeline. I know I'm assuming that you've been in contact with DEQ and VDH. Are they okay with this timeline? Because I know they would love us to have it down quicker, but I just want to make sure.
Through in Bowdoin, I know on the DEQ side, there have been regular updates with Bryson and Bowdoin, and the information we've been providing at our progress meetings. I think they're aware of our timeline. I don't know if they've seen exact timelines, but we have given some regular updates. So I'm confident that they're comfortable, but I don't know, Bryce, do you have any other information? I know we've been passing that on to in Bowdoin, and we're going to continue to include DEQ in the process.
Why I'm bringing it up is we still once in a while have issues there. And so, citizens and ratepayers are very concerned that these violations are still occurring. So, it is an old plant. We all know that. And there's only so much you can do.
Yeah. I did want to say we have been coordinating with all the regulatory agencies, keeping them up to date, whether it's through the funding process or outside the funding process, and they are okay with the timelines we're moving forward.
Okay, thank you very much. And then my last, and this is for the public because they might not understand exactly what goes into getting easements. This is not eminent domain. Do we pay, for easements on people's property? Could you explain that a little bit? Because some people get nervous when you throw out easements, and especially utility easements.
We haven't discussed the specific for King George. I'm sure we'll be having that discussion. Typically, we do a BAR, it's basically an appraisal of what that easement should be worth, and work with the county on fair offers to people. That's kind of the short answer. I'm not sure we've gotten into those discussions. We'll be having those discussions in the next month or two. We may be including Ms. Lackey in those discussions too, and staff. I know in many other localities, that's how we do it. We take the area of the permanent and temporary easements, and then there's a formula based on land value to come up with what is fair and reasonable to offer for those easements.
And this is to lay the water and the sewer pipes?
That is correct, yes.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. We appreciate you coming out and giving us this update.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to the public hearing on the proposed telecommunications lease at Monmouth Tower with Celico Partnership.
If I may, does the chair have the script for the public hearing? Yes. Okay. I can give the staff report when you're ready.
Okay. The King George County Service Authority Board of Directors will now hold a public hearing to receive public input regarding the proposed telecommunications lease at Monmouth Tower with Celico Partnership, doing business as Verizon Wireless. I will first ask for the staff report. I will then open the floor for public comment. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per speaker. In order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak, please state your name and address before you comment. Upon completion of public comment, I will bring the matter back to the board for discussion and potential action.
So consistent with direction that I received from the board at the October 17th meeting, I requested that the proposed leasing entity, Celico, which does business as Verizon Wireless, that they match the annual rental escalation that's proposed by another potential occupant of the same site. And they agreed to that. Originally, they proposed an escalation every 5 years, but now they'll do a lesser escalation, but on an annual basis. So they are proposing an initial 10-year lease with 2 5-year renewal options. In the first year, the rent payment would be $24,000 annually, paid in monthly installments, with a 2% escalator in each subsequent year. The lease would be primarily of a 10-foot elevation on the water tower. They would have to construct a corral around the existing water tower to attach their telecommunications equipment. And then there's some associated ground space needed for a generator and some additional facilities like the wiring that's needed to go ahead and accomplish what they want to do. So the lease requires that they provide as-built drawings after completion of the work, so we would know the precise location of where these encumbrances are. It is a potential co-location spot. They believe a second corral would be supported by the structural analysis that they submitted. So there is a potentially interested second party who could go onto another space on the same water tower. It's not clear, as I reported at the last meeting, whether or not a public hearing is necessarily required. However, in an abundance of caution, we did the necessary advertisement. And so the proposed lease was included in your agenda packet. And that's all I have to report.
Have there been any written statements received? Spender? No. Not seeing any public comment at this time, I will close the public hearing. Mr. Dines, was anybody online?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. At this time, I will close public hearing.
Madam Chair, I do have one question for Ms. Lackey.
Yes, please.
Thank you. They're putting new equipment on these towers, correct? It sounds like.
Yes, my understanding is it would be all new equipment. So the timing is pretty good because, as mentioned by Ms. Kupka, there's already work under the water tower, so it'll be repainted. It'll be newly painted before this attachment is made to the tower.
With that, my concern is, do they have adequate fencing and that and security for it, becomes an attractive nuisance when you got a fun things that are on it to climb, you know what I mean? Did they preface what they're going to do to make sure they have fencing and?
There is no proposed additional fencing. In the agenda packet are the elevations that are shown, but my understanding is that you're going to need a crane to get to this corral. There will be some on-the-ground equipment, but I'm sure they're going to secure that in some way so that the generator and other equipment isn't disrupted.
I just wanted to make sure because I don't want us open for liability, especially for the stuff on the ground, if they can have easy access to it.
Ms. Kupka? I have one question, just as a follow-up to that. Would we be held liable for their equipment if it was damaged?
So under the lease, as long as we did not create the instance that created the damage, we wouldn't be liable for it.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion?
Madam Chair, I have a motion.
Good.
I'll move to direct staff to execute the water tower lease agreement with Selco Partnership.
Second.
I have a motion and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. I see no action items, so we will move on to discussion items and the general manager report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just point out that we do have some non-capital update. There are no updates to the non-capital items. And we will have Bowden here at the next meeting to provide you with a overview of the operating activity they have had as water and wastewater operators. And then we'll have Mr. Eisenbeis as well to provide you with an update on maintenance. Just a reminder, couple things that are on your list. I guess it'll come up here in a second. Annual employee holiday luncheon at 12 to 2 p.m. At the Parks and Rec Citizens Center. That is the, we don't have a date, but it is the 13th on this next Wednesday. So if you can all make it, that'd be great. And that's for every employee. So we're looking forward to having everybody there. Next meeting, obviously, is the 19th and at 5:30. And then upcoming holidays, December 22nd is a 4-hour additional holiday. That's the Friday, so people get off at noon. And then, of course, Christmas is the 25th. So just to let you know.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Any questions?
Madam Chair, I have a motion. I move that the King George County Board of Directors, I move that the King George County Board of Directors, Service Authority Board of Directors convene in closed session for discussion of a class action lawsuit regarding PFAS contamination pursuant to State Code Section 2.2-3711A7 for consultation or briefing with legal counsel regarding actual litigation, and State Code Section 2.2-3711A8 for consultation with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters. I invite the interim general manager, county attorney, and assistant county attorney as needed because they are deemed necessary and/or their presence will reasonably aid the board in its consideration of one or more of the topics to be discussed pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3712F.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye. We are now in closed session.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
I move that the King George County Service Authority Board of Directors return to public meeting and certify by vote that only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered during the closed meeting.
Second.
We'll have a roll call. So certify.
So certify.
So certify.
Chair, so certify. We're back in open session.
Madam Chair, I failed to mention that we do have the October utility report from Imboden. So the next meeting, they will provide you the November meeting, or report, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Madam Chair, I'll move to adjourn to Tuesday, December 19th, 2023 at 5:30 PM in the Robert H. Combs Boardroom.
Second.
I have a motion and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. We will adjourn to Tuesday, December 19th at 5:30 in the boardroom.